You wake up in a small, windowless chamber that smells of sweat, fear, and olive oil. The stone walls are cold against your bare skin, and you can hear the distant sound of laughter echoing from the main house, the kind of laughter that makes your stomach clench with dread. Your body aches from last night, bruises blooming purple and yellow across your ribs like some grotesque flower. The iron shackle around your ankle has rubbed the skin raw, and dried blood flakes off when you move. Footsteps approach, heavy sandals on marble. You know that sound? It's the overseer coming to prepare you for another day of what they call service. Your hands shake as you reach for the thin tunic crumpled in the corner. 15 years old, though you've stopped counting birthdays since they brought you here. Time moves differently when you're property. The door scrapes open, metal against stone, and harsh sunlight streams in. You squint, raising a trembling hand to shield your eyes. The overseer's silhouette fills the doorway, a mountain of muscle and scars, his face a map of cruelty carved by years of breaking young spirits. "Clean yourself," he growls, tossing a damp cloth at your feet. "The master has guests arriving tonight, important guests. And you," his eyes rake over your body with the cold calculation of a horse trader, "you're going to help entertain them." Your throat constricts. You know what that means. You've known since the first night they dragged you, kicking and screaming, from your village. Since they told you that your family's debts had been paid in the only currency they had left, you. This was the reality for countless young men in ancient Greece. Not the sanitized version taught in schools, where philosophy and democracy shine bright enough to blind us to the shadows. Behind the marble columns and intellectual discourse, behind the symposiums and political debates, existed a system that consumed the vulnerable and discarded their humanity like broken pottery. Before diving into these forgotten stories of survival and suffering, if you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared curiosity about the past. The selection process began long before you understood what was happening. Perhaps your family owed money to a wealthy landowner. Perhaps raiders swept through your village during one of the endless wars that plagued the Greek world. Perhaps you were simply born beautiful in a world that saw beauty as a commodity to be harvested and sold. In the rural villages scattered across the Greek countryside, families lived on the knife's edge of survival. A bad harvest, an injury to the father, a death in the family, any of these could push a household into debt. And when the creditors came calling, they weren't interested in empty promises or future earnings. They wanted payment in flesh. Picture a small farming community nestled in a valley between olive groves. The houses are simple, mud brick and thatch, with dirt floors and single rooms where entire families sleep together for warmth. Children run naked between the houses, their laughter mixing with the bleating of goats and the distant sound of women grinding grain. It's a harsh life, but it's life nonetheless. Then comes the drought. Week after week of merciless sun beating down on withered crops. The olive trees, ancient and gnarled, produce only shriveled fruit. The barley fields turn brown and brittle. Wells that have sustained the village for generations begin to run dry. Families begin to make choices no parent should ever make. First, they sell their livestock, the goats and sheep that represent their only wealth. Then comes the jewelry, the few precious items passed down through generations. When those are gone, they start looking at their children with different eyes. The slave merchants arrive like vultures sensing carrion. They set up in the village center, their chains and ropes coiled like metal serpents, their ledgers filled with names and prices. They offer immediate payment for long-term contracts. 20 years of service for enough silver to keep a family fed through winter. It sounds reasonable, even generous, when your children are literally starving. But you're 12 years old. You don't understand the mathematics of desperation. You only know that your father won't meet your eyes as he negotiates your price, that your mother turns away when the merchant examines your teeth like you're a horse. You feel the rough hands checking your muscles, evaluating your potential. You hear words like promising and good breeding and suitable for household service, but you don't understand what they mean, not yet. The merchant counts out silver coins into your father's palm. The metal catches the sunlight, each piece representing a year of your life. Your father's hands shake as he takes the money, but he takes it nonetheless. Your mother covers her face and weeps, but she doesn't stop the transaction. They tell you it's temporary, that you'll earn money and return home a man, wealthy enough to buy your own land, maybe even take a wife. They promise you'll be treated well, that you'll learn valuable skills, that this is an opportunity for advancement. The lies fall from their lips like honey from a broken comb, sweet but poisonous. The journey to the city is a nightmare of chained necks and blistered feet. You're part of a human caravan now, dozens of boys and young men linked together by iron and despair. The older ones don't talk much. They've learnt that hope is just another word for future disappointment. The younger ones cry for their mothers until their voices give out, or until the overseers beat the sound from their throats. You march through landscapes that would be beautiful under different circumstances. Rolling hills covered in olive groves, coastal roads where the sea sparkles like scattered diamonds, mountain passes where eagles soar overhead. But you see none of it. Your world has shrunk to the length of chain between you and the boy in front of you, to the rhythm of feet on stone, to the growing certainty that you will never see home again. At night they chain you to stakes driven into the ground. You lie on your side in the dirt, listening to the muffled sobs of the other boys, feeling the weight of the iron around your neck like a collar of fate. Sometimes the merchants bring visitors to inspect their merchandise, men with soft hands and calculating eyes who walk among you like farmers examining cattle. They prod and poke, checking for disease or injury, evaluating your potential for various forms of service. You learn to recognize the different types of buyers. The agricultural slave owners look for muscle and endurance. They want boys who can work in the fields from dawn to dusk. The household masters seek a different quality, compliance, intelligence, a certain fragility that suggests you won't cause trouble. But there's a third category, and you learn to dread their visits most of all. These men dress in fine clothing and speak with cultured accents. They smell of expensive perfumes and wine, and their fingers glitter with rings. When they examine you, their touch lingers in ways that make your skin crawl. They're looking for something specific, a combination of youth and beauty that has nothing to do with labor and everything to do with pleasure. The slave market in Athens is assault on every sense. The sound hits you first. Hundreds of voices haggling, crying, pleading, commanding. The smell comes next. Unwashed bodies, fierce sweat, urine, and something else you can't identify but that makes your stomach turn. Then you see it, and you understand why the older slaves warned you to keep your eyes down. Naked bodies arranged in rows like merchandise. Children barely old enough to walk standing beside their mothers, their eyes wide with confusion. Old men with broken spirits and bent backs, their value measured in whatever strength remains in their aging muscles. And everywhere the buyers, circling like sharks, pointing and discussing prices as if the people on the platforms can't hear every word. You're cleaned and oiled before your sale. Not out of kindness, but because clean merchandise fetches higher prices. The oil makes your skin gleam in the sunlight, highlighting the lean muscles you've developed during the journey. Someone has decided you're too pretty for field work, and you're positioned with the household slaves, the ones destined for indoor service. The auctioneer's voice booms across the market as he describes your attributes. Your age, your region of origin, your physical condition. He mentions your pleasing appearance and gentle temperament, code words that make certain buyers lean forward with interest. The bidding starts low but climbs quickly as more men join the competition. You stand frozen on the platform, trying to disappear into yourself as strange hands examine your body. Someone forces your mouth open to check your teeth. Another tests the strength of your grip. A third runs his fingers through your hair, commenting on its texture and color. You're not a person anymore. You're an object being evaluated for purchase. The winning bidder is a man named Lysander, though you won't learn his name until later. All you see now is his satisfied smile as he counts out the silver, his eyes already possessing you before the transaction is complete. He's middle-aged and well-fed, with the soft hands of someone who's never done manual labor. His tunic is expensive silk, dyed the deep purple that proclaims wealth and status. When he looks at you, there's something in his expression that makes you want to run, even though the chains make escape impossible. Lysander owns a large household in the wealthy district of Athens. His house is bigger than your entire village. Marble columns, painted walls, elaborate mosaics depicting gods and heroes. Servants scurry through corridors carrying trays of food and wine, their movements quick and nervous. You notice that many of them are young men, all of them beautiful in different ways, all of them bearing the same look of resigned despair you're beginning to recognize as the face of captivity. The overseer who claims you from Lysander is named Demetrius. He's a former slave himself, purchased young, and worked his way up through a combination of intelligence and ruthlessness. Now he manages the household slaves with an iron fist, understanding better than anyone how to break spirits and ensure compliance. He explains the rules as he leads you through the house. You will be fed twice daily, barley porridge in the morning, bread and olives in the evening. You will be given clean clothes once per week. You will bathe when ordered, eat when ordered, sleep when ordered. You will speak only when spoken to. You will never look a free person directly in the eyes. You will never refuse an order, no matter what that order might be. And then comes the part that makes your blood freeze in your veins. You are here to serve the master and his guests in whatever capacity they require. This service may involve pouring wine, serving food, cleaning rooms, or providing entertainment. The nature of this entertainment, Demetrius explains with a cruel smile, will become clear in time. Some slaves resist at first, he continues, but resistance only leads to pain. Compliance, on the other hand, can lead to certain privileges, better food, a warmer place to sleep, perhaps even small personal possessions. Your new quarters are in the basement of the house, a series of small cells where the male slaves sleep. Each cell contains a straw mattress, a thin blanket, and a chamber pot. The walls are thick stone designed to muffle sound. You quickly learn why this is necessary. The other slaves welcome you with a mixture of sympathy and warning. There's Marcus, a boy about your age who's been here for 2 years. His eyes hold depths of pain that seem impossible for someone so young. There's Alexios, older and scarred, who tells you in whispered conversations about the special guests who visit the house and what they expect from the entertainment. And there's Philemon, barely 14 but with the haunted expression of someone much older. He was once the son of a small merchant family until his father's business failed and creditors seized everything, including the children. He's been in the house for 6 months, and he's the one who explains what really happens during the symposiums. Greek culture celebrated the symposium, the drinking party where educated men gathered to discuss philosophy, politics, and art. These were sophisticated affairs, intellectually stimulating conversations between the greatest minds of the ancient world. At least, that's how they're remembered. The reality was often very different, especially when the wine flowed freely and the guests demanded more intimate entertainment. The slaves were expected to serve not just food and drink, but themselves. The philosophers who debated the nature of virtue and justice by day had no qualms about using young slaves for their pleasure by night. The same men who wrote beautiful poetry about love and honor treated their human property like living toys, to be used and discarded at will. Philemon describes the preparation rituals with a voice devoid of emotion, as if he's talking about someone else's life. The slaves are bathed and oiled, their bodies made smooth and gleaming. They're given special tunics, thin fabric that clings to their forms, designed more to entice than to clothe. Sometimes they're given jewelry, golden bracelets or necklaces that mark them as ornamental rather than utilitarian. The symposium begins formally enough. The guests recline on couches arranged around the room, discussing the topics of the day while slaves pour wine and present elaborate dishes. The conversation might touch on the nature of democracy, the philosophy of Socrates, or the latest military campaigns. These are educated, cultured men who pride themselves on their intellectual sophistication. But as the evening progresses and the wine takes effect, the tone shifts. The philosophical discussions give way to cruder entertainment. Stories become bawdy jokes. Intellectual debates devolve into boastful competition. And the slaves, who have been serving silently around the edges of the room, suddenly find themselves the center of attention. It starts with small requests. Pour wine for this guest. Massage the shoulders of that one. Feed grapes to the man on the corner couch. Each task seems innocent enough, but you learn to read the signs, the way conversations quiet when you approach, the lingering touches that have nothing to do with serving wine, the way certain guests watch your movements with predatory interest. The first time you're selected for special service, you're too naive to understand what's happening. A guest, a man old enough to be your grandfather, requests that you join him on his couch. He wants you to share his wine, he says, to discuss your homeland, to tell him about your family. His questions seem friendly at first. Where are you from? Do you miss your home? Are you being treated well? His hand rests on your shoulder as he talks, then slowly moves to your back, then lower. You try to move away, but his grip tightens. Other guests are watching now, their conversations fading as they focus on the entertainment. What happens next is burned into your memory with the clarity that only trauma can provide. The way your protests are ignored, how your struggles are met with laughter from the other guests. The feeling of helplessness as hands hold you down, as clothing is torn away, as your childhood ends in the most brutal way possible. Afterwards, you lie in your cell and stare at the stone ceiling, trying to understand how the world could contain such cruelty. Your body aches, but the emotional wounds cut deeper. You're not even a person anymore. You're a thing to be used and discarded, a source of entertainment for men who write poetry about the beauty of the human soul. But this is only the beginning. Over the following months you learn that what happened that first night was considered mild by the standards of the house. Some guests have specific preferences, particular cruelties they enjoy inflicting. Others compete to see who can break a slave's spirit most completely. The overseer encourages this behavior, knowing that broken slaves are compliant slaves. You discover that the household operates on a complex hierarchy of abuse. The newest slaves bear the worst treatment, serving as fresh meat for the guests' appetites. Those who survive long enough might be promoted to different roles, personal servants to less violent masters, or kitchen workers who rarely interact with guests directly. But promotion requires more than just survival. It requires a complete surrender of dignity, a willingness to participate in your own dehumanization. Some slaves try to resist. Marcus attempted to escape during his first month, only to be recaptured and beaten so severely that he walked with a limp for weeks afterward. Alexios once refused a particularly degrading order and spent 3 days chained in the courtyard without food or water, exposed to the elements as an example to the others. But resistance, you learn, takes many forms. Some slaves retreat so deeply into themselves that they become like walking corpses, present in body but absent in spirit. Others develop a kind of desperate cunning, learning to anticipate their master's moods and avoid the worst punishments through careful observation and submission. And a few, the lucky ones, simply die. Whether from disease, injury, or sheer despair, death becomes a form of liberation. You've seen slaves simply stop eating, stop responding to orders, stop caring whether they live or die. The overseers usually replace them quickly. There's always a fresh supply of young bodies available at the slave markets. The psychological techniques used to break slaves are as sophisticated as they are cruel. Isolation is one of the most effective weapons. You're cut off from everyone you've ever known, surrounded by people who are as powerless as you are. The other slaves can offer sympathy, but they can't provide protection or hope. Unpredictability is another tool. You never know when you'll be summoned, what will be required of you, or how severe the punishment might be for the smallest mistake. This constant uncertainty creates a state of chronic fear that wears down resistance more effectively than any physical torture. But perhaps the most insidious technique is the destruction of identity. They take away your name and give you another, something that sounds more exotic or pleasing to Greek ears. They forbid you from speaking your native language or practicing your family's customs. They dress you in their clothes, feed you their food, force you to worship their gods. Slowly, systematically, they erase everything that made you who you were. The guests who visit the house represent the cream of Athenian society. Wealthy merchants, government officials, renowned philosophers, celebrated artists, men whose names are recorded in history as great contributors to human civilization. Yet here, in the privacy of Lysander's dining room, they shed their public personas and reveal appetites that would shock their admirers. There's Dionysios, a respected politician known for his speeches about justice and civic virtue. In public, he champions the rights of citizens and speaks eloquently about the moral foundations of society. In private, he delights in humiliating young slaves, forcing them to perform degrading acts while he quotes passages from Homer. Then there's Cleomenes, a wealthy merchant who funds public works and is praised for his generosity to the poor. His charitable reputation masks a taste for violence that leaves slaves scarred and broken. He views his cruelty as a form of education, claiming that pain teaches valuable lessons about the natural order of society. Most disturbing of all is Sophistes, a philosopher who writes treatises on ethics and the nature of the good life. His public teachings emphasize the importance of virtue, self-control, and respect for the divine order. But when wine loosens his tongue and darkens his heart, he becomes a monster who justifies every cruelty with elaborate philosophical arguments.